My name is Jiles Smith, and welcome to our community. Community service. Welcome to our community. This week we have the pleasure of having former 59th District Assemblyman, State Assemblyman, Anthony Adams.
Giles, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Outstanding. I appreciate that, and thank you for your time today as well.
You bet.
I know you're a very busy person, so I want to jump right into it if it's okay with you.
Looking forward to that.
Our community kind of wants to know, you have a long career in public service. What drives you to public service?
It's a sense of giving back to the community. I came from a background where my dad was in the Air Force, and so he basically dedicated his life, to giving back to his community. And I kind of grew up in that environment. I felt like that was a part of who I was, and I didn't realize how much I believed that until I really started to get out of the house and go do my own thing. I was going to school and getting out there in the world, and you know what? I found that I could go out in the world, I could make money, I could do those kind of things, but it wasn't very satisfying to me. I didn't get a sense of like purpose, you know what I'm saying? Like I was really content. And when by accident I happened to first get involved in public service, it's like a light bulb went on. I just knew right away I wanted to do this the rest of my life. There's something about reaching out and helping people, giving people a sense that someone else cares about them and really being a part of their life. There's nothing like it. Right. And if you can actually do that, and someone's willing to pay you on top of it.
Right. That's a win-win right there.
Oh, it's golden. Yeah, so, you can't go wrong.
So again, though, why politics? Why did you choose that avenue, that direction?
Actually, as my pastor. My pastor was talking to me one day at church, and he was like, well, what are you going to do with yourself? And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. I was going to college at the time, but I was sort of just doing my thing. I didn't really have any purpose. And he said, well, have you thought about, going into politics? And I said, well, I never really thought about it, but I might give it a try. And he said, well, I have this friend of mine, and he's involved, and why don't you go and talk to him and see if it interests you? So I went and talked to this guy, and he said, you want to come in and work here for a while, just like intern, do some stuff for free over the summer? I said, yeah, that'd be great. I said, I'm still working part-time because I always worked when I was going to school, right? Mm-hmm. My wife and I have been married a long time, but both of us, we come from means. We don't have a lot of money, mm-hmm. So we had to work and always provide for ourselves. So I said, as long as I can come in and work for free, but only part-time, because I still have to go and do my other part-time job for a paycheck. And they were like, yeah, no problem. So I got involved, and I'll never forget this, because I'll tell you exactly the moment. Exactly the moment when I knew what was happening. So I was working for a state assemblyman, right? Mm-hmm. And I was working as an intern in his office. And he doesn't even know who I am. Right? He doesn't. Right. I'm just this guy in there answering phones and trying to do my thing and be helpful. But I'm sitting at this desk, and the phone rings, and I pick it up. And it's this lady, right? And she says to me, I'm so mad at the DMV. They've been, messing around with me. They can't get anything done. I've tried this. They can't. And she was just going off, right? So I listened like 10, 15 minutes. She was just, her voice didn't raise high, but she was pretty much yelling at me the entire time. Right. I said, okay, I understand. I was taking notes, trying to make sure, ma'am, I understand. Let me see if I can do something for you, okay? I'll call you back as soon as I have an answer. I hung up with her. 15 minutes later, I had that problem solved. Not an answer, mm-hmm. Solved. Like done. Like she didn't have to go back to the DMV. The matter was taken care of. And I just had this incredible moment of illumination. Mm-hmm. I thought, I just helped this lady reconnect with her own government. Her mm-hmm. government was doing her wrong, and I got to be the person who got blessed to go in there and make her government work for her again, right. Instead of the other way around. Right. I was hooked. Right. That's all it took. I was hooked.
So naturally, you solve problems, basically.
I solve problems. Mm-hmm. I'm the wolf. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, there's something about being that guy, who knows enough about a government, knows enough about how institutions work, right. and to get in there and solve problems for people. Because you know what, most people are working, mm-hmm. providing for their families, taking care of their kids, and they have problems, and they don't always have the ability to take care of them, right. Even though they're sitting there nagging at them, right? Mm-hmm. when somebody like me can come to town and take care of those problems for them, it's fantastic. And that's what you want. You want somebody who can be your advocate, somebody who can represent you. And you shouldn't have to pay that person, right? That's what your politicians are there for. They're there to represent you. And I think that's the part that I love so much about it. I mean, when you're doing that and you're giving back directly to your community and you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not because someone's giving you a paycheck, not because you have to, but because you want to. There's nothing like it.
That's a blessing. It sounds
It
like
really
it's
is.
great.
It really is.
So what were some of your key accomplishments when you served in Assembly? Can you talk about those?
Sure. Well, we did a lot of things, but I'll tell you, the truth of the matter is that the thing that we had to struggle with the most during our time was massive budget deficits. I don't have to tell any of your audience members about struggling, right? We've all been there for the last 6, 7, 8 years. As this economy was just a disaster. Well, I was serving in the legislature at a time when we were really trying to get a handle on this, and the government had grown pretty big, and we had to go pretty slow, right? And so it was tough. It was really tough for a lot of us, and we wanted to get the balanced budget going, but that means cutting a lot of services. That means cutting a lot of services, and that's great political rhetoric to say, I'm going to cut, but at the end of the day, you're cutting people. You know what I'm saying? You don't make a cut, without it hurting people somewhere. Why is that? Because here's the thing about government that most people don't know. The state government is really only made of about 3 big players, okay? There's 3 big players who take the most of the money for the state. I'm going to talk to you just generally speaking, okay?
Right.
So when I was in the legislature, one of the first budgets I had was like an $85 billion budget. That's just our general fund budget, not the entire budget, but the amount that we actually have control over, okay? The total budget's from like $140 billion, and we have control of about $85 billion of it. The rest of it's like federal dollars that come in, that kind of thing. Of that 85, right, about $40 billion of the 85 goes just to education, right? Another 25 of that goes to health and human services, right? And then about another 15 million or billion, excuse me, depending on how much you have to work with, goes to like prisons and jails and stuff like that. And the rest of it, that like a couple billion, like 3, 4, 5 billion, is everything else the state does. Everything else.
3 or 4 or 5. That's it.
Everything else. So the big three, your prisons, your health and human services, and education. So when you talk about cutting the size of government, you better be prepared to make a cut in one of those 3 areas.
And that's kind of what this show was really about in the CYP. If you really think about it, if we help those children make the right decisions, they won't necessarily be in the criminal justice system and cost the citizens of our state about 49, at least the last estimates I had was $49,000 a year.
Right.
If you put them in, if you let them go to college, for example, it's $20,000 that they become tax-paying citizens. So we can break that cycle, but it seems like this whole cycle is just something that.
And you know what the cycle does? The cycle starts with the community, right? As much as people like to tell you about the good things the government can do for you, right? And they look to the government to solve problems. The truth of the matter is it's a culture, right? Because you know this and I know this, right? Because we both have been mentors to younger kids. We both have had that experience, like helping raise up kids and teach them, right? And I don't know about you, but I think I've been a lot more effective teaching kids to do the right thing than I think government has by telling them what to do.
I think you're right. Bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
And when an officer has to stop a young person from stealing or hurting somebody else, that's behind the curve at that point. Making the right decisions up front makes a difference.
It's everything. It's absolutely everything. And the thing is we can. See, I think the problem is most people, they get it in their heads that they don't have the ability to do it, that it's too much to do. They don't realize that it's a pretty simple thing if you just commit yourself to a little bit of stuff, right? So volunteer to be that coach.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Go to that homeless shelter and take your kids with you so that you go and feed meals. You go provide clothes. Why? Not only is it the right thing to do to help your community, but you want to show your kids. You want to live by example. Show them about giving back to the community. You know what I'm saying? When that plate comes around at church, you drop some money in and you give your kids some money to drop it. Why? Because they need to get in the habit of knowing that giving back is an important part of being blessed yourself.
Exactly.
Right? And when you have that reciprocation, right? My life is blessed, and I have a moral duty now to bless others. Once you instill that in kids, right? That message will carry them through so many different types of things in their lives, right? All the little tiny moral decisions they're going to make, from the tiniest things to the very big things, right? Instilling the idea that my life is a blessed life, right? And
Right.
if I don't think so, I need to look around a little more,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And once I do, and I see how blessed my life is, now I feel like I have a sense of responsibility to do something,
Right.
you know?
Better for the system.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I think you're right on. Hey, now that you're not in Sacramento anymore,
Right.
You could let us behind the curtain. What works well and what doesn't work so well?
The single biggest lesson that I think people need to learn about how politics actually works, right, is really trying to get into a place where they understand that politics is personal. I think it was Tip O'Neill who actually coined that phrase, right? Politics is personal. The more you think that you can just write up a bullet point sheet, or you can just go in there with 4 people once a year and say, this is our problem, it doesn't solve problems. You have to be able to get your hands dirty. You have to get into the mix. You have to be willing to work with the people in your community to actually solve the problem. And here's the biggest thing I found in my time in Sacramento, that the people who come in with a coalition of folks prepared to do the work, the more effective I could be, because you have to think of your politicians as an extension of what you're trying to do, not the end, right? Because there's always a group of people that come in and they just want to give you a list of things. Here you go. Here's the things that we want this year. That's probably not going to happen.
Anthony, what major character trait must a politician have?
The single biggest trait they must have is, and I know this is going to make a number of people laugh, but I'm not kidding when I say this, is a deep-seated sense of responsibility to their community, right? Because politicians come in all kinds of stripes, and I know politicians get a bad name. I'm a kind of person who doesn't mind calling myself a politician. I'm proud of it because I'm proud of my time in service, and I'm proud of what I did. I believe being a politician is a noble profession, but the people that are the most successful at this job are the people who are so deeply concerned about their community that they're dying to get out there and find ways to solve problems. Because some politicians are like gregarious and charismatic, others are kind of shy and reserved. Some of them are very learned, they're scholarly, they like to get into the nuts and bolts. Some of them are big picture idea types of people, right? So it takes all types to be politicians. And if you're out there right now and you're wondering, should I be a politician? You need to explore it, because a politician is just a person in the community who steps forward and says, I want to help. That's all it is. That's all it is. And you do it, I do, we all do it, right? They just give me the label of politician, right? But the bottom line is, the single thing that brings all politicians together, right? And I'm telling you right now, and I'll say this with a straight face, having met hundreds and hundreds of politicians personally, firsthand, and got to know them, I cannot even think of 5 people that I would say weren't there for the right reasons. Almost every one of them is there for the right reason. They care about the community, they care about what they're doing, they're passionate about it, and they're willing to devote their time, energy, and lives to it. That's what you need.
Okay, let's play a game.
Okay.
I won't necessarily say a game, but it's a thing we do here on our community. We give you a broad subject and we let you just go with it.
All right.
Some things that our community really wants to know about. So let's talk about education first. Education in our community, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. No, I think that the problem that the education problem in America is not an education problem. I think it's a mindset problem. I think that we have lost track of what we expect from education. We're so used to being told what education is going to do for you that we've forgotten that it's your education. So let me give you an example, right? Because I had this thought even when I was a kid. Now, I may be the exception, but I'll tell you this thought I had. I remember when I was young, like just getting into junior high, and I thought, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
What's in it for me, right? Why am I dragging butt out of bed at 6:30 in the morning and going in here and sitting? What's in it for me? And I had a teacher who was really smart and helped me understand this, because I was struggling at the time with math, right? And I was like, I don't understand, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this, right? And it's so hard, and I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do algebra. I'm never going to do pre-calculus. I'm never, right? And my teacher said, you know what? You're not doing this so you can become an engineer. We're not teaching you math, right, so that you can put a rocket into space. We're teaching you math because it teaches you how to think. Right? It's about critical thinking skills. It's about understanding how things work. And that's what you have to do. In education, we need students to take back education for themselves. We need you out there to say, no, education is not about the teacher. Education is not about the school. It's not about whether I got the newest textbooks. It's about what do I want to get out of it. Because if you don't know what you want to get out of your education, you're not going to get anything out of it. If you're waiting for someone to tell you what you're going to get, you've already missed the point. You got to want it. You got to desire it. And you got to desire it. Why? Not because you're going to get more money, not because you want to be smarter than the person next to you, but because when you have knowledge, knowledge is power, right? And power frees you. It liberates you to do things that you would never imagine in 100 years you'd ever get a chance to do. But because you contain and you embody that knowledge, you can do almost anything. And I think that's the thing. Education is a complicated problem. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of really smart people who spend a lot of time moving those parts, right? But if the student themselves doesn't understand why it's important and they don't embrace it as their education, none of the rest of it matters.
Right. People need to be empowered. I concur with you 100%, but people need to be empowered. They need to believe that education is the great equalizer.
That's right.
If you're born with means or you're born without means, it can balance you over time.
That's right.
I tell young people when they talk about, well, I've never traveled, I won't travel the world. If you pick up the right book, you can go to London or Paris or anywhere. If you pick up the right book, you can actually go there mentally. We have to learn how to read early. We have to learn how to do arithmetic. I like the way education is going present, but when you give a young child an iPad and they just playing on Facebook and Twitter, that's not teaching them anything. Can you sit down and write a paragraph and show me how that you're gonna get the thing done? My opinion, community. I'll just tell you what I thought. Let's talk about crime and public safety.
All right.
I know you're a strong advocate, and I know you made some changes in your personal life. And now you're actually helping people on the front line. Let's talk about that.
Well, as I think you know, I'm now working for the Public Defender's Office. I work under Phyllis Morris, and hopefully,
Great lady. Great lady.
hopefully many of you out there know Phyllis. Phyllis is a fantastic lady. The Public Defender's Office may have the ring of something that you sort of think you know, but you may not really understand what it is. And so, let me tell you, when a person is convicted of a crime, or when a person is charged with a crime, if they can't afford to have an attorney, it's so important that they get representation that we, the taxpayers, all chip in and pay for those attorneys to make sure that you get good representation. Those attorneys that represent you when you don't have the money to do so, or when a person doesn't have the means, that's what we call the Public Defender's Office. And you know what? It's an interesting thing, but it's a fairly new concept. Most people don't realize that because they know the Public Defender's Office, they've heard of it, right? But this might surprise you to know that it wasn't until about the 1960s that we even had Public Defender's Offices.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Before that, the way it used to work is every community had a bar association, like the San Bernardino County Bar Association, the Riverside County Bar Association. And in the old days, the way it used to work is there was always a district attorney's office, but when there was an indigent person, somebody who needed an attorney but couldn't afford one, the judge would pick a member from the bar. They'd find somebody in the bar community and say, you have a duty because you're a lawyer, and part of being a lawyer means you give back to your community. Because you're a member of the bar, you have a duty, and I'm going to appoint you to represent this person.
Right.
And so that's the way it used to work. Well, in the 1960s, we started to change that. We said, this is such an important thing, and it's so important that people have that representation, that what we decided to do is we started to create offices that actually bring all these public defenders together so that we can go out there and provide good representation. And I'll tell you something. You would be hard-pressed to find better representation than you would from a public defender. Right? I think there's this common misconception that if you want a good lawyer, you pay for it. But if you don't have the money, then you get stuck with a public defender. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the same, if not better, service from your public defender. Because the truth of the matter is a private attorney, he may have all the best intentions. She may have all the time in the world to help you out. But they're there for a paycheck as well. So they're motivated partly by the money.
Right.
We're motivated by the desire to make sure you get the very, very best possible representation. And that's it. There's no other motive in it for us except that I want to make sure that a person who's charged with a crime has the best representation. And I'll tell you what, right? Because 9 times out of 10, right? This might surprise you. Most people who are charged with a crime, most times, they know they did it, right? Most times they know they did it. It's not that they're going to go in and say, oh, I didn't do it, I want to try to get off. No, most people know they didn't, but they just want somebody to look at their personal circumstance and tell them, we're going to look at you as an individual, not just as some number. They want somebody who's going to take what happened to them in their life and in this terrible moment in time and try to make a better situation out of it. And that's what we do in the office, right? Somebody comes in and they've had a bad stroke of luck and something bad happened. they don't want some district attorney just handing down a number on them. The people versus you, and you're just a defendant. You're just this nameless person, and they're just going to throw the book at you. And they got the entire power of the entire state, right? The sword of the state coming down on you, and you're sitting there by yourself. Our job is to be that shield, to say, no. We want to look at the person, right? You DA, you see a crime, and we understand you have a job to protect the public, but we don't just see a crime, we see a person. A person who's had a bad struggle, like a person who's really struggling, and we want to make sure that person gets everything that they need to be prepared to defend themselves against this monolithic, gigantic state.
Again, everybody's not innocent in that situation, correct?
And it varies from person to person, right? Sometimes there's actual people who are innocent, and sometimes there's people who are not. But I'll tell you what, you'd be surprised. Almost always, the person who's not guilty doesn't come in trying to pretend like he is or she is.
Right.
Most people are actually really, really honest. They'll come in and say, I know I did it. I just was hoping you could help me out.
But don't public defenders have a large caseload? And I want to preface that by saying, I'm a strong advocate for Phyllis Morris. She's awesome, and the county could not have picked a better public defender, in my opinion, at all. She's extremely passionate about it, and she really wants everybody to get the firm and just defense they can in situations. But in some situations, like you said, the person may not be guilty. Right. And to get a fair shake, you got to have competent people willing to fight for you.
That's absolutely
the public
right.
defender's office.
That's exactly right. And a lot of times, one of the problems is with people trying to put on a good legal defense is it's expensive. It's expensive, right? Trial takes time. Witnesses, have to come in. Sometimes you need experts. All those things are time and money, and a lot of times people don't have those resources. That's why our office is able to go out into the community and reach out and make sure that people have the resources they need. Because there's nothing more scary than being charged with a crime. Yeah. Nothing, right? Because all of a sudden, the whole weight of the government comes down on you, and they're like, "You're guilty," right? And you're going, "Wait a second, I thought I was innocent until proven guilty," right? But it doesn't feel like that when you're charged with a crime. And so we get to be that bit of humanity that steps in, right? And if a person is looking to have, their case, go to trial because they know they're innocent, they want to have it. They need to have the confidence that their lawyers believe in them and they're really working hard, right? I'm telling you right now, and I say this with complete and total sincerity, right? To have the caliber and integrity of a district attorney like Mike Ramos and the caliber and integrity of a public defender like Phyllis Morris, this county is very fortunate to have exceptionally good representatives on both sides of this equation, trying to find genuine justice.
I'm gonna try to get Mr. Ramos on our show as well. I think he's outstanding.
I think you'd be well advised to do that because both he and she are strong advocates for justice, and I think that's the important thing to take away from this is that the law looks at people like they're all equal, right? But the system of justice, the public defender's office and the district attorney's office, they actually have to look at the individual and weigh out the circumstance.
Well, we only got a few more minutes with you. I want to talk about something that also we talked offline. People of color in the criminal justice system, actively participating in it. Let's talk about that.
This is a huge deal, and I'm really glad you brought this up because it's something that I don't think most people stop to think about until it's really too late. And I want to talk about that specifically. And let me talk to all of you out there who are, who have ever been called out for jury duty, because I bet you anything you're called out and you're like, oh, not jury duty, I don't want to do that. And it's a hassle, and you don't want to sit around in court all day, and you don't have anything to read, and so you're like, forget it, it's not worth it. But let me tell you about a real problem that, especially amongst our communities of color, when men and women feel like their community has been mistreated by law enforcement or the criminal justice system, there's a tendency to back away from it, to say, I don't want to participate in it, right? To delegitimize the criminal justice system by not participating in it. But there's a problem with that system. There's a problem with that way of thinking, and that is you empower all the wrong people when you do that. You perpetuate the very thing that you don't like about the criminal justice system by choosing not to participate. In the same way that if you choose not to vote, the only people that get elected are the people who don't share your common views, the people who don't have your perspective or your sense of background. Those people don't get elected because you don't vote. Well, if you don't participate in jury duty, if you get up on a stand and you tell the judge, well, I don't believe in the criminal justice system, I don't believe the police always tell the truth, I don't want to serve as a juror. What you've just done effectively is you've disenfranchised a person from getting a fair trial because they need to be represented by their community. And if that person sitting there scared, right, sitting there scared, being accused of a crime, is looking for people who understand where he or she is coming from.
Right. Common experiences.
Common experiences, right? Cultural experiences, the same type of growing up, and the same, the same things that we share and care about. If those people can't be found anywhere on your jury, how's that fair? How's that fair? It's not. And that person is less likely to get a fair trial, because it is important for people to participate if we're going to have an honest to goodness opportunity for people of all stripes to feel like their voice is being heard.
Well, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely important.
Anthony, I could talk to you for hours, but unfortunately our time is up on this show. In our community, again, we have Anthony Adams. He's doing great things here for our public defender's office. So let's give him a hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giles. I sure appreciate it.
Appreciate it. For more information about the CYP, please go to our website at www.thecyp.com. The CYP was started in 2004 and it's designed to help educate, inform, and inspire our community. From an offshoot of that, we created the show that you're watching now, Our Community. Welcome, and I hope you are informed, educated, and inspired.